What?
I was at his house.
Oh, you were? Okay.
Well, we
Well,
got
I missed a
quorum,
good
that's good.
opportunity.
We got quorum.
Alright.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was,
If
yeah.
Adrian's ready, we can.
We're ready.
Thanks. And
All right.
Ryan just texted he's on the way.
Well, he likes rolling, so that's.
Oh.
Pretty sure they are.
file that away.
He's on his way. All right. Wait for me. Want to just get started now?
No, we'll go ahead and get started.
Let's go ahead and get started. All right, go ahead. Let's begin the work session.
All right. Thank you, Mayor. Is my mic on? Seth? If you don't mind, I want to take this off since I'm far away from everybody and I'm vaccinated. If that's okay
Well, I'm
with you.
vaccinated too.
But I'm way far away.
Oh.
And it's up
Well, I
to
just-
you all, but I want to do this while
I
I'm talking.
do think when we talk, we probably do need to take mask off because it's really still hard to hear for people.
I think that's a great idea.
I do too.
Okay.
You get 6 feet away?
Yes.
No. I'll slide down a little bit.
So welcome to the May 3rd City Council meeting. We will do the work session. So I'll go over the items on the consent agenda. But before I go over those items, if you're new or haven't joined us in a while, we go over our vision statement. We also have the mission statement and core values for the city. These have all been adopted by the City Council. The vision statement for the city of Belmont is that Belmont will be a vibrant, multi-generational community that incorporates small town charm and heritage with an entrepreneurial spirit. And you can see the mission statement and the core values that the council has adopted for how the council will conduct business. So for the consent agenda, we have 11 items. The first 2 items are approval of minutes from 2 meetings in April, your April 5th regular meeting and your April 19th workshop. Item 3 is adoption of a resolution opposing North Carolina House Bill 401 and North Carolina Senate Bill 349. These are companion bills making their way through the General Assembly. We talked about these either at the last. Provide a little bit more information on these. He helped draft the resolution and he penned an op-ed in the paper. I guess typed an op-ed in the paper. But this bill would undermine local zoning authority and it would restrict how you are able to review development approvals or development projects and rezonings through the traffic. It differentiates DOT's public safety regulations versus the congestion management regulation. So it would undo a lot of the work that you have done as the council. It also would require you to approve certain residential developments by right, but I will ask Councilman Seelinger to explain that in probably less diplomatic terms than what I'm able to do.
Okay, yeah, so for anyone who's not familiar with this bill, what it does is it would actually require us to allow duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes, and townhomes on any lot zoned for residential development, which severely limits our ability to manage the planning and growth of those properties in any sort of responsible manner. So the resolution that I've worked up here actually borrows from the resolutions that a lot of our peer cities have also passed. I made some small changes to wording and added a few things of my own, but the gist of it is kind of underlining the rather radical and unprecedented nature of this particular zoning proposal, and sort of emphasizes the importance of local control in determining planning and land use in a way that I think is, because the general thrust of this bill is very concerned with affordable housing. So I've kind of modified the resolution that we've got, sort of address some of those concerns, but sort of underlining the fact that we live here, we know these neighborhoods in a way that I think that legislators in Raleigh don't. Gist of it.
So we've got a resolution in opposition to those bills that, if approved, we will send to our local delegation, but also the leadership of the House, the Senate, and the governor's office. And cities and towns all across North Carolina are concerned about this and are passing similarly worded resolutions.
And if I could make a comment, this is extremely concerning. I remember when I became a member of the council, and I've been on longer except other than Charlie, it was really surprising at how little power we had with zoning. And if you continue to take little pieces away, which they've done,
You're
we're going
right.
to have no way to restrict anything. And so we really don't
You're
want
right.
the look of our town
I
to
know.
be so drastically changed, and this would be a problem
Yeah.
with that.
Feedback on what Mark was saying. The resolution is a good idea. And the more municipalities that join us in doing that is going to be important. But the legislators themselves did not come up with this idea. In my opinion, it was brought to them by the developer of the home building lobby. The land is getting scarcer and scarcer in some areas. It's just an effort to capitalize on existing property and to demolish existing homes. To put up a quad. And I would encourage, however we can, the citizens also to contact, if this issue is important to you all, to contact our representatives also. We can put a pressure on them to some extent, but the public, the citizens that they represent, can also put on pressure that we can. Just wanted to add that.
Okay.
Thank you. So if you approve this, and it sounds like there's consensus to approve this resolution, we can certainly put information out on our social media channels to let our residents
Yes.
and followers of those channels know what this could do to their neighborhood and what they can do to contact the appropriate people in Raleigh.
I agree.
Thank you.
We should probably do one for the, a resolution regarding the tree ordinance, or the tree protection ordinance as well.
I've got that on the manager's report, but yes,
Okay.
I agree. Because that's another example of the General Assembly trying to take our authority away.
Especially considering how much time and money we
Yes.
spent strengthening the tree protection ordinance just last year.
Yes.
Wasn't
Yeah.
it a state grant that paid for part of that too? So, you know, it's kind of the irony there. They pay for an ordinance that they then come behind us and nullify, but I don't know.
I'm
Maybe
sure
it
the
makes more
irony will be
sense in
lost on
Raleigh,
them.
but
Yes. Does anyone else have any comments on the resolution or those bills? I mean, I think you all
I
summarized
mean, I
it very well.
support everything everyone said, so.
Thank you. Item 4 on the consent agenda is adoption of the City Council Rules of Procedure. These are the rules of procedure that I handed out at the last meeting and that Mayor Pro Tem Heffer and Councilman Seelinger worked on. There were some minor tweaks to those that we incorporated, and those are in your agenda. Those are rules of procedures for how you will govern the presiding over the meetings and motions and what's appropriate, what's not appropriate.
I just want to say thank you to Jim and Mark for working on this stuff. You guys did a great job on that. Great job.
Thank you.
Item 5 is also a follow-up from the workshop from a few weeks ago, and it is approval of a scope of services agreement with First Tryon Advisors. And if you remember, we had a presentation from a gentleman with First Tryon, and this would be consulting services for the city, helping us as we go through the financial part of the recreation center. That's going to be a $12 million project, or $12.5 million project, depending on what the final numbers look like, which is a huge loan, huge financing for us. And so we want someone with the network of lending partners and banks out there, but also that can write an RFP for financing and be able to read through the responses that we get. It's a $15,000 fee, but we feel that between their expertise and their network, they have access to a lot more lenders than what we would typically do, that we will certainly make that back by getting a better rate and better terms. Item 6 is a time extension request for the Rivermist Neighborhood Major Development Plan. This is one that has come back to you recently. There's an issue with the railroad crossing. We were able to resolve that. And so, but because of that, the time that it took to work out that agreement with the railroad and then coming back here, they're running out of time. Their site plan approval expires next week, I believe. So we're asking for a 6-month extension that would take them through or to November the 11th of this year. They feel confident they can get that done in 4 months. Well, I want to give them 6 months because they are working with the railroad. So that would extend their plan approval for the next 6 months until November. Item 7 on the consent agenda is a resolution of support for the Gaston County Blueway Trail. We're fortunate to be located between the South Fork River and the Catawba River, and Gaston County is working with the Carolina Thread Trail to come up with some blueways so that you can paddle up and down the rivers and have places that you could put in and take out your canoes and kayaks or stand-up paddle boards. So we certainly want to support their efforts to make more recreational opportunities along the South Fork River and the Catawba River. And I mentioned last month we're starting to get back into the events, into the races and normal life, or somewhat normal life. The next couple items come to you as events and requesting some street closures. Item 8 on the consent agenda is a request from the Oasis Shriners to have a parade on November the 6th of this year from 2 to 3 p.m. That'll shut down Main Street from Mercy Place down to Stowe Park. They had wanted to do this last year, obviously couldn't have the parade last year, so wanted to have that in November. Item 9 on the consent agenda is a request from the Jaycees to host a 5K event on June the 5th of this year from 8 to 10. That 5K goes down the East Catawba Street corridor from downtown at the Lodge to the Kevin Lofton Riverfront Park. Item 10 on the consent agenda is a resolution of support for a North Carolina DOT planning grant to update our pedestrian master plan. We applied for this last year. We were not successful with that grant application, so we want to try again this year. That's an 80% grant from NCDOT, so 20% from the city. That would be a $9,000 net cost to the city, which is a pretty good deal. We're only paying 20%, so we have included the funding for that in the budget. But in order to apply for it, we do need to get that resolution of support. And that plan, I believe, is about 10 or 15 years old now, so we do want to update our pedestrian master plan. And then the last item on the consent agenda is approval of an ordinance to close Main Street on May the 24th for a film production from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. There's a movie crew that wants to film a scene from an upcoming movie, basically in front of Nellie's. So they want to close down just that portion there in front of Nellie's from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. And so if you approve that, we'll certainly get the word out to the businesses, and they've already coordinated with our Main Street program on that.
It's been a long time since we had a movie filmed here in
We
Belmar.
haven't had one filmed in
You know what
quite
movie
a while.
it is? You know what movie it is? Is Jennifer Aniston in it?
If she's in it, I'll let you know.
Thank you. If we approve this, I'll personally deliver the approval.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll give her your number.
Thank you.
That's all that I have on the.
Shall we go proceed to the regular agenda? We need a let me get my page here. Hold on a second. Let's get here.
If there's no other questions, Mayor, you can go ahead and call us to order.
You
We
just
can
call
start.
us to order.
See one, yeah. All right, let's go ahead and call the meeting to order. And we're going to have Jim Heffern do the invocation, and Martha's going to do the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay?
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for bestowing all of your blessings on us. We are eagerly looking forward to spring and summer and the increased opportunities to enjoy the outdoors and enjoy life as we knew it, as it was, as is normal. And we are seeing light at the end of the long tunnel that we've been on, and we ask that you continue to guide us through this trial and give us hope that the end of the tunnel is within sight. We ask for your blessing and wisdom in our deliberations tonight, that we have the wisdom to pass upon all the items brought before us in a manner that's best for our city. We ask all these things in your name. Amen.
All right, Martha,
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right.
My broadcast now.
Now, we got some special presentations to make here. And I'm going to wear my mask, make sure don't pass this stuff on to anybody. All right. As the mayor of Belmont, the Environmental Sustainability Board held a virtual art contest to celebrate Earth Day. The contest was for children of all ages and from all schools. This year's contest theme was tree creatures. All submissions were presented to the Environmental Sustainability Board at the April meeting, and the top 4 were voted on by the board. Winning artwork will be posted on the city's website and Facebook page. Winners will receive a gift card to a local Belmont business. So tonight's my pleasure to present the awards to the winners. Please come forward when your name is called to receive your certificates from Peyton Ratchford, Employment Sustainability Board staff contact. Hard to speak with a mask on. All right. The first winner we have as the winner of the contest this year, Delia Acosta. ¿Habla español? ¿De qué país? What country? ¿De qué país? What country? Oh, okay. Mexico. Okay, that's why Costa. Okay, very good, very good. All right. And then we have Haldora Churchill as second place winner. Give her a big hand. Haldora, good to see you. And you know, Mark Steeling, your son's name is Winston. Did you know that? I don't know if you're a kid or not. Winston Churchill. Okay. And then the third place winner is Bree Smith. Oh, somebody going to pick up an award for him? Okay. And then the last place winner, the fourth place winner, is Bastian Merida. Congratulations. I'm not going to ask if you speak Spanish. All right. So let's take their pictures. Yeah. Yeah, very good. Thank you, guys. Congratulations. Good. You want to take this? Yeah. Very good. Thank you very much. All right. Winston. Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Yep.
Next item on the agenda is we got to
Well, we
put the meeting into order. So let's get a motion to.
it's in order. We want to approve the consent agenda.
Well, let me
Yeah,
ask,
let's make a motion to approve the
Well-
consent agenda. Yeah.
Richard,
prior to approving the consent agenda, I would like to move the rules of procedure from the consent to the regular agenda if no one has any objection.
Can't hear him.
he wanted to move the rules of procedure from the consent to the regular agenda.
I have a couple of questions.
That's okay.
No
All right.
objection.
We can add that as,
1A, possible? Or do you want to put it as 10?
if you don't mind, let's put that as 11. So we'll put it after the utility billing policy, since we do have some guests here. And we'll let them.
Then I'd move to approve the consent agenda with the exception of item 4 and move item 4 from the consent agenda to item C11 on the regular agenda.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion's approved then.
Thank you.
All right. Next item on the regular agenda is for public comment. Has anybody signed up for public comment?
Jamie, did you give him the
You
sign-up
got
sheet?
right there, Charlie, right here.
Oh, I didn't see it. Okay, I'm sorry. All right, Steve Meacham, Pam Meacham, and Angela Street. Okay? I know, I saw Angela here. That's all we had. All right, Steve Meacham, state your name and address. You got 3 minutes.
All right, my name is Steve Meacham. I'm one of the owners of MD Momentum Construction. We were the general contractors for the Belmont Public Works project here, this space that we're in right now, and this whole entire structure here. So, I'm also a resident of Belmont, I live at 4101 Arbor Spring Court. And I'm here tonight to respectfully request that the city council terminate the current city manager and replace him with someone who exhibits the values and ethics that the Belmont City Council and the Belmont residents expect from someone in his position. There are several reasons why I'm here asking that the city manager be held accountable. They mostly come from my experience on the Belmont Project Works project, and some of the reasons are as follows. City manager set this Belmont Project Works up for failure for the project it was even started. He knew the architect didn't have the knowledge, the skills, ability, the resources to work on a project of this scope and complexity, and he did nothing to mitigate the issues. And you may wonder, how did he know this? The architect was paid to work on this project design for over 9 years. Yet incredibly, the city manager did not know basic design elements of the project. And in fact, there was a $300,000 work scope change right after the project started. City manager was aware of the architect's issues, and when he chose to continue with the architect, he accepted the responsibility and the liability for all the project deficiencies. And there were significant project deficiencies. These included major changes to the scope of work, as mentioned above, the $300,000 change, effective 46 to 92 drawings after 9 years of design work. There were a lot of project delays. 80% of those delays were caused by the architect, and we had over 130 requests for information and clarifications for drawings, specifications. Some questions took over 1 year to get resolved. The contractor had one significant issue on this project, which involved this concrete structure over here, but unlike the city manager and the architect, the contractor fixed the problem and paid the cost to do so. We lived up to our obligations. There are 124 cost overruns and change orders to correct problems on a project that was designed for over 9 years. The city manager only took a more active role in the project when the legitimate change orders and cost overruns that we had on the project, and decided that he couldn't go back to the city council and ask for more money to pay for these. And so he only took a more active role when that happened. And the amount of money we're talking about is approximately $75,000 of change orders that were work scope cost increases and changes that we did to help keep the project moving forward. Even though the architect was responsible for about 80% of the project delays, the city manager wanted the GC to pay $500 a day in liquidated damages for exceeding the project duration. And this was just a ploy in order to keep from paying legitimate change orders at work cost goes.
3 minutes.
Project duration was never a concern until we learned that that could be used to avoid for paying legitimate cost changes. Also, we didn't pay for $25,000 for third-party testing, which was required by North Carolina Building Code 170401.
Steve, that's 3 minutes.
Well, I
Are up.
appreciate it. Like I said, I
Well,
have
Mayor?
information. There's a lot
Now,
of
your wife has signed up too. Does she want to
She's got
defer the
something
minutes
else
to you?
If anybody would like to hear more information or wants
I would
to
like
talk
for him to
us about it
finish.
further,
I'd
we
like to
have
waive
some
the 3
additional
minutes.
information. Be glad for you to take a look at it. If you want to talk to us about it, be glad to talk to you about it.
Mayor,
I don't get one?
Mayor, I'd like to consider waiving the 3-minute rule.
Mm-mm.
No. No, his
No.
wife signed up to speak too. Did you want to continue? State your name and address, and you have 3 minutes.
4101 Arbor Spring Court, and I'm also co-owner of Momentum Construction. I want to speak about the numerous problems we've had in getting paid in a timely manner and the financial impact to our company caused by the architect's failures and the city manager's unprofessional tactics. These words are not used carelessly. Time does not allow us to share the mountain of information we have to support what we are saying. We can only offer up data points and examples and hope that hopefully paint a picture to the many issues and concerns we have. City employees moved into their new space in early October 2020. At that time, we were still owed $383,828. On March 15, 2021, 5.5 months later, we received a partial payment of $308,117. On March 30th, 2021, I was contacted by Parks, Wilson Law asking me to sign a waiver and release form needed for the March 31st closing. I informed them that we had not been paid in full and we were still owed $75,711. I received a second email stating that Mr. Wilson had contacted the city and was told that we were paid in full. I spent hours creating a spreadsheet showing every submitted pay application and date we were paid. I sent this to Mr. Wilson, and then, and only then did the city confirm we were still owed the money. It raises the question as to the intentions of the city manager, and more importantly, to the competency of the people who are in charge of money. As to not delay the closing, I allowed the money owed to us to be paid at the closing schedule for the next day. I jumped through hoops that day to prove we had not been paid in full, to get forms notarized and sent back to the lawyer. We could just as easily insist if we could be paid in full before we signed any documents. I imagine that would have caused a huge problem for the loan closing. But that's not how we do business. We apply the same team player attitude throughout the entire project. That cannot be said for the city of Belmont. What does it mean when we don't get paid in a timely manner? It means we finance the project for the city of Belmont. We pay employees, subcontractors, and suppliers. Those people had to be paid regardless of when we got paid. What does it mean when the project is delayed because we are waiting on the architect to approve submittals, change orders, or explain something? It means that Momentum Construction spent approximately $50,000 in superintendent costs and general conditions to extend the project past the anticipated collection date. This is money we did not get reimbursed for. This is in addition to the $75,000 change order and the $25,000 in testing that the city manager refused to pay for that Steve spoke of earlier. Steve and I have been in Belmont for 5 years, so we have a vested interest in who's making decisions. I just hope that people who care about Belmont like we do take the time to learn who is running the city and realize we can do better than what we have now. We welcome the opportunity to sit with anyone who wishes to know the truth. We are proud of our work on this project. We are not proud of the way we are treated, and neither should you.
Thank you. Next, we have to speak up on the public comment is Angela Street.
My name is Angela Street. I live at 2422 Emily Drive, Belmont. I listened to the City Council workshop in April and heard you express some concerns and questions about the consideration of the dog park, and I'm here to offer some appropriate place for dogs to learn to socialize with other people and their pets, and that comes before maintaining and developing more family-friendly pets, which is obviously important. And people socialization. A dog park is an area where people with similar interests can meet and socialize. So whether you're three children in retirement age, adding a dog to your family, or a dog is your family, a dog park can be as diverse as the community it serves, and it's a place for people with common interests to come. So on the question of is there appetite for a dog park in Belmont, in spring of 2018, a public interest survey was issued. There were 428 respondents. 92% had dogs, 79% were residents of Belmont. 91% said they supported the development of a dog park in Belmont, and 44% said they would take their dog to the hospital. In fall of 2020, a social media only survey simply asked if people supported the future Belmont Dog Park and indicated the general location. As of November 2020, it had 264 respondents, and 254 of those people said they supported the dog park. Regarding the question of is this the right use for this city undeveloped property, Saturday scavenger hunt fundraiser ended at this property, and participants were informally surveyed on their way back, and they found to be extremely excited about using this property for a dog park, and they have lots of considerations. I have the complete survey results, everything here, further information on that is on. And I'm also happy to answer any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Angela. All right, brings us to item number 2, public hearing for blood plasma facility, a request to amend various chapters of the Belmont Land Development Code to establish regulations for blood plasma facilities.
I'll make a motion, we go into public hearing.
Make a
Second.
motion to go into public hearing. Second, Jim Heffern. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, so we're in public hearing now. Thank you. Kelly.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. As read into the record, this is Text Amendment 2019-04. This is a request to amend chapters 256 of the Belmont Land Development Code to establish regulations for blood plasma facilities. We're proposing to establish a definition, identify an appropriate zoning district for this use, as well as identify appropriate operational performance standards. Now, this comes to us actually from the city of Gastonia. Their own experience. They had a blood plasma facility built adjacent to a residential community. There were reports of loitering, suspect activity, inadequate parking, and some of the adjacent property owners were concerned about the potential for decrease in property values. The city of Gastonia reacted by adopting an ordinance. We have talked with them as well as our police department and have developed the proposed amendment. So with regard to the definition, it can be found on page 82 of your report. The facility is defined as a facility in which human blood plasma is collected from donors who may receive monetary compensation for the donation of plasma. We are proposing that the use be limited to the highway commercial zoning district. That is our highest density autocentric zoning classification for the city, so that's along the Wilkinson corridor. We are proposing to allow the use by right if certain performance standards can be met, and which I will go over in one moment, and if they cannot be met, then it would need to be considered by a special use permit that is reviewed and decided upon by the city council. So the proposed performance standards is a standard that is that we use for other adult-related type of uses. It's a distance separation requirement. We're proposing that this use has to be a minimum of 500 feet or greater to be allowed by right. That is measured from property line to property line. So if you have a mixed-use development, a commercial development, and they occupied a certain suite, we don't measure it from that location. We measure it from the actual property lines. We've also put in requirements related to their hours of operation. Again, if they cannot meet that separation requirement, it would have to be considered by the city council through the special use permit process. This was shared with our police department, reviewed the draft ordinance, and has offered support of it. With all text amendments, the city council is required to evaluate consistency of the goals of the adopted comprehensive land use plan and other plans and find that the use is a reasonable and in the best interests type of action. This proposal went to the planning board at their April 15th meeting. They proposed a minor adjustment. They added a word to section 6.2.25 where we added the word or district to ensure that it could be adequately defined. So the specific sentence will now say a use by right blood plasma facility shall be located at least 500 linear feet away from any residential use or civic use or district. So the property does not have to be developed. So it avoids any future conflict. The planning board also made the two required findings. They found that the proposed amendment was consistent with the goals of the adopted comprehensive land use plan and other plans because it promotes public health and safety, and they found it was a reasonable request and in the public interest because it allows the use in an appropriate location in the city. So with that, we ask that you receive the planning board's recommendation to approve this text amendment, receive any public comments, render a decision. As with all text amendments, you can motion to approve as presented, approve with modifications, or recommend disapproval of this text amendment. And again, the council will need to make the two required findings, one of consistency and one that it's a reasonable request.
Shelley, I just have one question.
Yes.
How many potential blood plasma places do we have in the area here? in
It
Belmont?
would be very limited. We studied the corridor, and it will be very difficult to find a location that would not require special use permit. So I can't really answer that question because
Yeah.
they do have the opportunity to propose a location and request city council approval.
Okay.
I have one question.
Yes, sir.
Related to the planning board's modification,
Mhm.
when they added or district to 6.2.25A.
Yes.
Along those same lines, if that's the thinking, would or district also be need to be added to 6.2.25B so that it would read a blood plasma facility located within 500 linear feet of any residential or civic use or district may be permitted upon approval of a special use
I will
permit.
be glad to add that, yes, for clarification, to make it clear.
Okay. Anybody have any other questions for Shelley?
District, thank you.
So if you wanted to limit these to the highway commercial, where are they allowed now?
Right now, they would be considered just a medical office type use, and they could be in any commercial district in the city.
Okay.
But by establishing a definition and identifying a specific district, we are then limiting it just to that area.
Sure, and the conditions you put on it, you think it's gonna be difficult for them to secure a location without special dispensation?
Right, it would just be a matter of process. There are multiple locations they can be considered within the entire highway commercial corridor. It's just the process that they would have to go through. So it'd be difficult to find an area that would be allowed by right, but they can still come before the council by special use permit.
Okay, we seem to be doing a great deal by conditional use and not much by right. Why introduce it as by right? Could we limit it to conditional use? Or do you think that's essentially what we're doing with the restrictions?
Well, sometimes when we study uses that some are used to being considered by right and almost anywhere in the city, we try to establish it in a manner that would be the least legally challenged. So again, if they could meet the performance standards and find the location that could be allowed by right, they can come forth and request that. Otherwise, it will be by special use permit.
Okay.
And that special use permit is not the same thing as a conditional zoning.
That is not the
correct?
same as conditional
Right.
zoning. It is a
Right.
quasi-judicial process that comes before the city council.
Because it would be directed to that specific use rather than a
It's
zone.
tied just to that use in the particular zone where it's allowed.
Anybody have anything for Shelley? All right, we have a motion to come out of public hearing.
Motion to come out of public hearing.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you, Shelley. Appreciate that. Let's consider adoption of an ordinance approving the blood plasma facility, request to amend various chapters of the Belmont Land Development Code to establish regulations for blood plasma facilities. We have a motion to approve.
I'll motion to approve.
Got a motion?
With the one change that I added to.
With the amendment that Councilman Heffron added.
Second.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye, motion carries. Very good.
I would make a motion to find that this ordinance is consistent with the comprehensive land use plan and a reasonable request in that it promotes health and safety within the city.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Very good. Next item on the agenda is public hearing for tree protection ordinance. Request to amend Chapter 11 of the Land Development Code to allow administrative relief and tree inventory requirements for non-residential development projects.
I'll make a motion to go into public hearing.
Motion to go into public hearing.
Second.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
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 All right, we're in public hearing now.
Thank you, Mayor.
Shelley,
and
you're here
council.
again.
I'm here again, yes. So as read into the record, this is text amendment 2021-02. This is a request to amend specifically section 11.1.5 of the Land Development Code to allow for administrative relief in the tree inventory requirements for non-residential development projects only. As you can recall, during the council retreat, staff provided an update on the implementation of our newly adopted tree ordinance, and we had received quite a bit of feedback from the development community regarding the inventory requirement. So the tree protection ordinance requires that a property owner or developer survey every tree on a property that is 10 inches in diameter or larger. Once that's done, and the intent behind that is to identify the healthy trees, the larger healthy trees when they're doing their site design. But when it comes to non-residential development, the tree protection ordinance only requires that a maximum of 10% of this 100% tree inventory area be preserved as tree save area. So when we shared that with the council during the retreat and shared some of the comments we received, council supported staff going back and developing this administrative relief process for the non-residential development community. I will say that we worked on this in coordination with the Environmental Sustainability Board, who helped with the development of the tree ordinance initially. So what we came back with is that when a applicant or developer proposes to protect 200% of the minimum requirement, so say it's 10%, if they will go ahead and commit to a 20% tree save area, then they're only required to survey that 20% area instead of 100% of the land area. So that saves the non-residential development community and time and money. And that's what they're looking for to help expedite their project. They would still be required to survey all heritage trees on the property. Those are 36 inches in diameter or greater, and then abide by all the other regulations that fall within the tree protection ordinance. We've actually processed one special request like this by going to the ESB board, and they supported it, and it was well received by the non-residential developer. So that is what's proposed here tonight. As with all text amendments, the state does require that consistency findings be made, consistency with the goals of the adopted comprehensive land use plan and other plans, and that you find that this is a reasonable request in the public interest. With that, the case went to the planning board at their April meeting. It was unanimous support of the request, and they did make the required findings that the amendment is consistent because it promotes the goals of economic development and environment by streamlining the process while protecting tree canopy in the city. So with that, I ask that you receive this report. I'll be happy to answer any questions and render a decision.
Any questions for Shelley?
We discussed this at our retreat, didn't we? And this is consistent with what we directed at the retreat.
That is correct.
Okay.
Refresh my memory on something. I agree with the amendment, but when they're going to save the trees, is there going to be a scenario where the trees could be on the back portion of the lot, just that 20%? Okay, we got to save 20%. We're doing it in the rear. Everything up front, except for heritage trees, would be removed?
That could be the case, yes, it could be. In most cases, that's the way development occurs. Most steep slopes, or if there's creeks with constrained property, that's where you find your higher quality, larger tree canopies. That's typically what is saved. So yes, they do the development community as a whole tends to clear off the more level areas. It makes for better and more financially affordable development for their building and parking and so forth. So that could be the case, but we do work with them to, again, identify that all the trees in the area that they are saving are healthy, they all qualify. We record a tree conservation easement on that area as well, so it runs with the land.
Okay, so in that scenario, anything in advance of, let's say, the back lot where they decide to keep the trees, the only things left standing would be the heritage trees?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear that last
Okay, so
part.
in the scenario where we have a lot and they want to meet their requirement in the rear with the 20%, the heritage trees in advance of that, out in front of that, would they be required to also be saved?
We work with them on their site design. There's nothing in our ordinance that says that you are prohibited 100% from removing a heritage tree, especially if it's the only good building envelope area of the site. But we do work with them on design of the site, so if we can save some of the heritage trees, that's what we recommend. And in most cases, they do like to save them because they get a sort of a 2-for-1 on the area. So if they save a heritage trees, they get twice as much area to count towards their tree save area.
Okay.
It's a multiplier.
All right. Anybody want to make a motion to come out of public hearing?
I'll make a motion to go to a public hearing.
And second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. Thank you, Shelley. Next is considering adoption of an ordinance approving the tree protection ordinance to amend Chapter 11 in the Land Development Code and to allow relief in tree inventory requirements for non-residential development property.
I'll motion to approve.
Got a motion?
I'll second.
Got a second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, very good.
And I'll move to find this to be a reasonable request and consistent with the comprehensive land use plan and other adopted plans because it promotes the goals of economic development and environment by streamlining the process while protecting tree canopy in the city.
Very good.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, very good. All right, Melissa?
Good evening. Tonight we have before you another text amendment, TA 2021.01.
Need a motion.
Oh, yeah. I'll move to go into public hearing.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay,
Here,
now we're good.
So this request is to amend Chapter 4 of the Land Development Code in order to increase parking pad requirements, specifically for single-family residential houses without garages. And we're proposing 25 feet in length by 10 feet in width. A little background. Our ordinance clearly defines parking pad requirement for houses with garages. That dates back to a 2012 amendment. We agree that this is adequate and we want to leave that part the same. However, we have found that our ordinance lacks clear standards for houses without garages. That has left us to defer to our parking space dimensional requirements in Chapter 9, the requirements that you typically find in parking lots. So through observation, feedback from the Planning and Zoning Board and residents, we found that additional parking area is required to ensure public safety and community character to avoid pictures like you see here below. So as vehicles and parking needs have evolved over time, we found that large trucks with their hitches can be upwards of 22 feet in length. So that's why we are proposing 25 feet for the houses without garages, where there's a little bit more room to pull up and have a little overhang in parking. And keeping the 30 feet for those houses with garages where there's a fixed structure and people tend to set back a little bit from the garage anyway. So we propose these dimensional requirements, and we've added some graphics to Chapter 4, like you see on the left. And we've looked at the amendment to evaluate the consistency with the comprehensive land use plan, and have found that this meets the goals number 1, 3, and 4, to ensure a balanced approach to land use, support choice in mobility, and ensure safer movements. And it has an added benefit of improving the community appearance by allowing adequate parking area. The Planning Board heard this request at their April meeting, and they transmit the recommendation of approval. They made the required findings that is consistent with adopted plans and found this request to be reasonable and in the public interest. It ensures increased public safety and community character. So tonight we ask you to receive the report and public comments and render the decision.
Okay. All right. Anybody have any questions?
This is fine. My question, I guess, is a practical one. Obviously, this wouldn't apply to any existing homes without garages. They'd be what's called grandfathered in, correct?
Correct.
So, you know, if the issue is with that, how many new homes are being built without garages, without street-facing garages? Is this going to, is this going to capture a lot of new development, or is the problem an existing one that this won't really?
And the majority of these that we see are the infill development projects where there's tight space anyway, so we do want to make sure that we have clearly defined standards for those projects.
I have one question. So I'm looking at it. It says if you've got a garage, the drive would be 30 feet, and if you don't have a garage, it'd be 25. I'm just wondering what the thought is around the 5-foot difference there.
Right, so, and it is street-facing garages. And we found that the fixed nature of these garage doors, people tend to park a few feet and leave a few feet to maneuver around. So in effect, you're getting closer to 25 feet of actual parking area. So we found that we want to just regulate and have regulations that meet the needs. That's why we proposed that.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, just curiosity, what was the minor adjustment made by the board?
Oh, right, sorry. So we wanted to make sure that we included wording to indicate these are minimum standards. So we added some language that says these are minimum. In other words, he doesn't have to be exactly 25 feet. If somebody wants to add 30, they can, but they have to have at least that minimum. So
Right, it
the
has to be at
minimum-
least 25 feet.
What's that?
I said it has to be at least 25 feet, but it can
Correct.
be more.
Exactly.
Okay. Any other questions? We have a motion to come out of public hearing.
I'll make a motion we come out of public hearing.
Do we hear a second? Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Next, let's consider the adoption of the ordinance approving parking pad requirements, revisions to Chapter 4 of the Land Development Code to increase parking pad requirements for street lot houses.
I'll make a
Motion to
motion.
approve.
I'll second.
Got a motion and a second. All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, very good.
And I'll make a motion to find this a reasonable request consistent with the comprehensive land use plan and all other associated plans by promoting a balanced approach to land use, choices in mobility, and enhancing the character of the town and improving community appearance.
It's a good thing we have an attorney on our council, you know?
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Very good. Let's move on to the next item on the agenda, report from Belmont Tourism Development Authority. Jim Hoffman here? There he is. Hey, Jim.
Good evening.
How you doing?
Good. How are you, Mayor?
All right.
Thank you for having me this evening.
Yeah.
First of all, my gratitude to Councilman Turner and Councilman Schrift for serving on the Belmont Tourism Development Authority. Appreciate their commitment to the board. Despite a tumultuous year for everyone and for the travel industry in particular, the Belmont Tourism Development Authority worked to communicate continuously with multiple audiences literally around the world. From sharing pertinent COVID-19 information to touting new destinations, we maximized our resources, the website and our social media channels with a significantly decreased budget. In May of last year, we were already in the throes of the COVID-19 pandemic, and the Tourism Board made the unanimous decision to budget very conservatively, cutting paid advertising and other promotions, as well as our grant programs. As a result, we expect by the end of the fiscal year, by the end of June, our revenue will be equal to or slightly exceed our expenditures. Currently, expenditures are about $46,000 with revenues of about $42,000. So we expect that to come in line over the next 2 months. This is less than half of the previous year's budget, but the authority was able to make a $20,000 payment to the Belmont Tryon commitment that we had made the prior year. That was the first of 5 $20,000 payments we'll make over the next 4 years. We were also able to maintain social media engagement with those followers and others, including the media. While we were forced to cancel the Belmont Blooms activities, an event that we proposed doing in conjunction with Daniel Stubb Botanical Garden, the City of Belmont, and the Tourism Authority, we did cancel that and then immediately pivoted to kind of a COVID-19 focus across all of our platforms. We shared resource materials such as the City of Belmont's COVID-19 collateral and videos. We continually emphasize precautions and safety, even when we are encouraging people to get out and about. We promoted al fresco dining. We developed a promotion for outdoor recreational opportunities in the fall, and that led to coverage across the state, across the Carolinas, in fact, in publications like AAA Go Carolinas and WBTV's QC3. In another effort, the Lyerly Agency, the agency of record, was tasked with publicity for Ivanka Trump's visit to Cherub's Cafe, the Cotton Candy Factory, and Bliss Gallery on October 1st, 2020. That netted an audience reach of 724 million people. Again, that's 724 million people that we reached through 122 published stories. From there, things started to loosen up, and we started to do some holiday activities, both here in the city and at Daniel Stowe Botanical Garden and throughout Belmont. We focused on the availability of safe programming that people could still enjoy the holiday season in a secure fashion. A press release shared across the wire netted stories from about 100 print and online publications, and that was literally across the country. We were able to maintain a consistent social media following, updating, posting, and networking. Our Facebook followers increased by 25% within this time frame. Steady impressions and engagement on Twitter focused more on a conversation and interactions with the followers that join us there. A monthly trivia contest was conducted, for example, for an audience of some 20,000 people who like to answer these questions and win prizes to Belmont businesses. Publicity was also garnered for some new Belmont businesses such as Heirloom, Belmont Yoga, the Wondering Cup, and of course, Home 2 Suites. We had hoped that the Home 2 Suites would add to our revenue. Unfortunately, because of the pandemic, reduced business travel in particular, that wasn't the case. It did keep us, I guess, above water. While some analysts have indicated that travel, particularly business travel, won't recover to pre-pandemic levels until possibly 2024, early indications from our friends over at the Hampton Inn lead us with a slightly more positive outlook. We hope that people will come back to Belmont to enjoy the leisure activities, come here to do business really, really quickly. Hotel occupancy is on the rise. We hope now, with two hotels contributing to our occupancy tax revenue, our budget will increase at least 50% next year. So we hope to keep moving up and forward. Be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Jim, for your report. Anybody have any questions for Jim?
I have a couple.
Sure.
I saw somewhere in the statute or whatever that there was to be quarterly reports. I can't recall seeing one. Is that submitted to the city manager or?
So I believe the minutes are provided.
Okay.
On we've been meeting on is it bi-monthly? We've been meeting every other month.
Yes.
This year because we haven't had quite the activity we have in past years.
Sure.
Typically, we meet every month, but
Okay.
And those are provided.
Yes,
I believe
they are.
Consistent
Okay.
with your agenda.
How is the new hotel doing in Belmont? Are we picking up a lot of rooms from that?
I'm sorry, Mayor. What?
The Home 2 Suites?
So no. In fact, it's really added a little bit to our bottom line, to our revenue, but in fact, that occupancy is down pretty far. In fact, what we believe is that the only people that are occupying the Home 2 Suites are people that previously occupied the Hampton Inn. So we think the business just moved from one location to the other, or spread out a little.
I think when people go on vacation, though, it's going to really improve a lot.
We hope so too. You have to keep in mind, and I know you served on the Tourism Authority for a number of years, Mayor, and I think you're aware that we really depend on business travelers.
Absolutely.
We have good proximity to the Charlotte Airport and good proximity to a lot of businesses that are located just between here and all the way to Kings Mountain. And so that really helps.
How's the garden doing now?
Garden's doing very, very well. We're open to the general public 5 days a week and Wednesday through Sunday. Had a tremendous holiday season. We had, even though we capped attendance at the garden for the holiday season, we had almost as many people come out this year as did last year. So that was pretty positive. Now we're trying to get open just a little bit more.
Well, I appreciate all you do.
Well, thank you, Mayor.
and the
It's my
people on
pleasure.
your committee too.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that without Jim, the Travel and Tourism Board would rely a lot more heavily on City of Belmont staff to operate. It's every year when it comes around to who should be handling the budget and the minutes and the notes and the organization, it's pretty evident that he does the lion's work. And so I just want to thank him for all that you do.
Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you, Jim.
Just
And,
one
and
more.
thanks to the staff. The
Thanks for your
staff does
report.
help an awful lot. So.
Just one more question. Mark and I were discussing this a while ago, but, you know, I read the statute, and this might be an Adrian question too. You know, the expenditures are to promote travel and tourism-related expenditures. How are we defining that? You know, I'm just curious as to what we're using that for and whether maybe the definition could be interpreted more broadly to support other things.
A very good question. So about 3 years ago, our focus was trying to reach people in other markets, trying to reach people, for example, in the Raleigh market and as far away as Knoxville or Atlanta. About 3 years ago, we developed a 3-year strategic plan, and the board at that time gave the direction that we wanted to kind of focus a little bit closer in. So we tend to place ads or do activities in publications like our state magazine, for example. We had a program with them. Our state magazine is distributed literally across the Carolinas, but 50% of their distribution is in the Charlotte region. So we're able to drive traffic from Charlotte to, say, Friday Night Live, but we are still honoring our commitment, honoring the statute, and promoting and trying to reach people that are beyond a 50-mile radius. The state defines a tourist is somebody that comes from more than 50 miles away for business, leisure, or other travel, or other purposes. So, and we feel like we've hit a pretty good kind of rhythm in doing that, and reaching both people, and trying to drive more traffic to the restaurants, and then also reaching people that may have a tendency to stay at the hotels.
And Jim, in answer partially to your question too, I was on the tourism board for a number of years. One of the things we kept looking at is this putting heads in beds. And that was one of the criteria we judged by, because it is kind of nebulous to some extent, but that's one of the things we looked at.
It is, and we also try to keep in mind that friends and family visit. So it's important to get people that are coming to visit mom and dad, or mom and dad coming to visit the kids. It's important to get them active and around the city as well.
Yeah. So the heads and beds thing has been something that's pretty consistent around every travel and tourism board that I've ever come across.
Yep.
But what that did was it eliminated the opportunity to kind of cross-promote any City of Belmont events, because there wasn't a direct way to track the heads and beds on a Friday Night Live. And so, nor would people from South Carolina coming up for a Friday Night Live typically rent a hotel. So this allowed us a little bit more latitude to spend the money on some different events I'll just say a little bit more latitude to spend money on some different events. One of the other things I've mentioned just during my time, because it's an interesting board, obviously we're only funded by the taxes that come back, and half all the taxes that we collect go straight to the county, and the other half we get to keep. And of that half, most of it comes from business travelers, which is your Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday crowd.
Right.
And so we were able to track the occupancy, and we had almost full occupancy on those days at the Hampton Inn. So it didn't make a ton of sense to try and fill up Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday because it was already full. And so we started to evolve into more of the weekend travelers, and that's where we got more involved with the Gaston outside, trying to bring people in, but more specifically around weddings. Weddings is $1 billion industry, and we had at the time Ten Catawba, the Danielstown Botanical Garden, Stowe Manor, and all these facilities that people would come in and book a hotel, even somebody local, or book a venue, and then they'd go block off 80 rooms on a Saturday night. Now, as we started to evolve down that path and really pick up more rhythms, more in line with when COVID happened, so we basically, we stopped funding it, but that should be ready to go, I would assume, as people get married again.
I don't think they stop.
I don't know if they stop yet, but maybe when they get married in a larger venue. But, just some insight, because it's a fascinating organization.
Jim, let me ask you a question. This new hotel, and it's clarification for me, extended stay, that does not contribute to our hotel tax, does it?
It depends on how it's booked, and I believe if it's booked 2 weeks or more, 3 weeks or more.
I think it's 30 days.
30 days.
I
Okay,
think it's 30 days, or maybe.
Yeah, you're right, Ryan.
I'm not positive.
Yeah,
but-
yeah, you're right. It's 30 days.
30 days.
So if it's booked for less than 30 days, we do receive half of the 6% occupancy tax. So
Okay, I wasn't sure if it was just the term extended stay or the time that
it
you
is,
stay.
yeah, it is.
It's very specific somewhere written, if
Okay.
you can find
Well, just to, also on what you're saying about the board, you know, I was on the board at that time, and I think it was a good move. We were focusing so far out
Mhm.
that we were skipping right over the largest market, which is right across the river. And I don't have the numbers, I'm sure you do, but I would hope that that strategy proved to be a good one, that we've seen some increase, or somehow we can quantify that we are getting those people from Charlotte.
Yeah, we are getting more hits from Charlotte on our website, and on our social media channels. So,
You know Phil Bogan, right?
I'm sorry?
Phil Bogan, our downtown director.
Yes.
Yeah, his moon project is going to be a great project for the fall. You know that, right?
I
We
do
need to
know
really
that.
pump that up.
We're going to pump that up as much as we can. We do hope that our budget's better and that we can help with some promotional dollars. We had to disappoint the project a couple of weeks ago. We didn't feel like we had the resources to commit right at this time.
Yeah.
But the board is certainly in favor of the Moon project and will support it any way possible.
That's going to be unique,
Yeah, very,
very unique.
very.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually something I kind of wanted to touch on, was that I think that might be an opportunity maybe to see a little bit more collaboration between the tourism board and the Main Street program. Because I feel like a lot of what the Main Street program does, like the events and the things they put on, I mean, the Friday Night Live, when we were doing it, you go downtown, it's just
So
full of people.
yes, we have done that, and that was kind of behind, focusing a little bit more locally. And I mentioned the Belmont Blooms event, and I had come to the city council last February and that was a collaborative project. That was a project that worked with the Tourism Authority and the Main Street Board. And certainly we would like to do more things like that. So yeah, absolutely.
Okay, yeah, because I know that a lot of other cities take a little bit, I think Jim kind of hinted at this, a little bit more expansive definition of what tourism is. Like I know that when we were doing the Parks and Rec Master Plan update, the consultant we had in talked about how some other cities, with their central park, basically they would use tourism dollars to help support things in there and things of that nature. I know that your budget's not enormous, so that's certainly a limiting factor here. I think he was talking about larger cities, but I think that we've got some opportunity here to think about things beyond just straight marketing, at least in my opinion. The other comment I guess I had is I know there's been some issues with quorum within the last year or so, just because of the change in, I guess, the hotel staff and stuff of that nature. Do you feel like that's something that, I know that we're kind of, the local act here sort of says exactly who's supposed to be on the board, but I would think presumably if we're having issues with membership, is that something that we would need to address with our legislative delegation as far as like tweaking who's on the board or making any changes to the membership there?
Okay, so the statute requires that we have a certain number of people that represent the locations where the occupancy tax comes from.
Right.
I can't remember what that number is.
1/3.
I'm sorry? 1/3 of our membership, and I think we might be slightly below that because we added a member perhaps 2 years ago, and I think we have been trying to recruit other people that are involved in the hotel industry. So We do not have anybody that's representing the Home 2 Suites. The Home 2 Suites and the Hampton Inn are owned by the same company, but theoretically you can have a couple of different people from that same organization. So we need to get somebody like that on there. You know, I think it's a good mix. We've got, like I said, a good mix of people. I represent Daniel Step Botanical Garden. Ted Hall, the former chamber president, has been on the board, I think, since its inception.
Yeah.
So we've got a pretty good mix right now.
And keep in mind that a third of these people, their whole goal is to promote their hotel to bring revenue to the hotel.
Right, well,
So-
no, I mean, I'm not, I guess my question here is that 1/3 membership
much.
requirement creating an issue? Would it make more sense to say like, I don't know, 1 or 2 people, or I don't know. I mean, I'm just, because I know I've looked through the meeting minutes, and I know there's been several meetings within the last year where you haven't had enough members present to conduct business, and with an organization that has a budget,
Yeah, it's disappointing.
Yeah.
So we've been meeting by Zoom, and I think we've had a quorum. I think there may have been, I can't
I mean,
remember.
it was at least more than once. I can't tell you
Yeah, I
exactly which
can't really
meetings it
recall either.
was, but
It hasn't happened lately, but I know it.
yeah,
has happened.
this might be more of a last year thing, but
Yeah, and I think you're correct.
Huh.
I do remember a period there where we did have trouble making a quorum.
okay.
Thank you so much, Jim, for taking the time to enlighten us about what's going on.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Next item on the agenda is consider the award of a contract for the Blue Zone Trail construction at Rocky Branch Park.
Thank you, Mayor. This item comes to you from the Tar Heel Trailblazers and city staff that have been working on the enhancement project for Rocky Branch Park. As we discussed at the retreat, the city is in a position financially to accelerate the enhancement project at Rocky Branch Park, working in partnership with the Tar Heel Trailblazers. And a couple weeks ago, Councilman Seelinger and the mayor and Mayor Pro Tem Heffron and I walked the Carolina Thread Trail section. And if you were out at Rocky Branch Park prior to this project, you'll see it is a tremendous improvement on the Carolina Thread Trail section. As we discussed at the retreat, and I believe you had a presentation from the Tar Heel Trailblazers last year or in 2019, last year all kind of runs together. The enhancement project is the Carolina Thread Trail, which I just showed a picture of. That's there was some grant money from the Carolina Thread Trail and city money going into that one. That part of the project is complete. They're just doing the final touch-ups on that. The Tar Heel Trailblazers are funding the green zone, which is the beginner area that's in the northern part, highlighted in green, and then the city at the retreat committed to funding the blue zone portion. The blue zone is shown here. It's kind of on the southeastern portion of the park. There is and it is more of an intermediate. It's a little, as you learn your skill, you can go from the green zone to the blue zone. There's future black zone that is more advanced. That would be funded primarily by the Tar Heel Trailblazers and private donations. And then, of course, the town of Cramerton has now adopted the Rocky Branch Park and the Carolina Thread Trail, so they will extend the Carolina Thread Trail to Cramerton. So this will have good off-road connectivity between Belmont and Cramerton at Stuart Cramer High School. So what we're asking tonight is that you award a contract to Nature Trails LLC for the Blue Zone construction. Because of the cost of this project, we had to use the formal bidding process outlined in the statutes. We only received 2 bids, so therefore we failed to receive the 3 bids, so we had to re-advertise and extend that for 7 days. After that 7-day extension, we still only received 2 bids, one from Nature Trails LLC and one from Black Diamond Designs. There's about a $12,000 or $13,000 difference in the two. Nature Trails LLC was the low bidder at $140,770. This was in line with what we estimated the project would cost, given the features that will be in the blue zone. So the committee that is handling this worked with us, and they certainly recommend awarding this to the low bidder, Nature Trails LLC. We would ask for a 10% contingency, so we'll have a project budget of $155,000, awarding that to Nature Trails LLC and authorizing me to sign that contract.
Nature Trails is there. They did the green zone, correct?
Yes, sir. And the Carolina Thread Trail.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will say that Nature Trails has done a pretty nice job with what's already gone in. You know, when we were out there, it was well exceeded my expectations. And then it was also kind of interesting to see. I mean, I know Adrian pointed out several sections where the trail used to be, and it's night and day. I think this particular contractor is actually doing a very nice job. So I'd have no objection to allowing them to continue working out there, because I think it's.
All I can say is that I haven't walked that long in a long time.
They're out of Chapel Hill, but we don't hold that against them.
Yeah.
Other than that, they're doing a great job.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, that's a plus. But
All right, any questions?
I make a motion to approve a contract with Nature Trails with a $155,000 budget reflecting the 10% contingency.
Or a second?
second.
Did you second?
Oh, yeah. I'll second.
Okay.
Marco seconded. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, very good.
Thank you.
All right, next item is consider the adoption of a utility billing policy.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. We went over this policy at your last workshop, but I'm going to go ahead and give a refresher on that policy tonight. So again, the purpose of this policy was to standardize our operating procedures. We didn't have them in writing. We had practices, best practices that we've had in place for a long time, but this codifies them in a document. We wanted to create fairness in the process so each person is treated exactly the same and maintain our high collection rate. And again, not to disrupt the things you already have going on, but try to just address any things that we needed to while developing this policy.
Mm-hmm.
So to kind of give you the process of how the billing collection works, our bills, they go out at the end of the month. The bills would be due on the 15th. And on the 15th, a late fee will be applied.
That's what happens if you're late.
And then if that bill's not paid on the 21st by 5 p.m., becomes delinquent, and there's a fee added according to your fee schedule. And then that on the 22nd is disconnection. One thing to point out on your disconnections here, you have about 6,500 utility accounts, and we average about 85 on that cutoff list once a month. So it's a pretty low percentage. You're talking about just a few handful of accounts out of all the ones that you do have. And they do a good job of getting a lot of those paid up very quickly. So significant changes from your existing practices, deposits. And the $150 deposit is what you have right now. Renters are the only ones that pay that. But this policy would impose a $300 deposit if a person does not provide their full Social Security number. We need those numbers to be able to collect that through the debt collection practice that we have, North Carolina Debt Set-Off Program. Homeowners would be required to pay a $150 deposit if they don't provide that Social Security number. Your bill due date is changing. Currently, it's the 10th. There's some sort of a 5-day grace period built in there, but this would just move it to the 15th. It's a lot easier to understand, remember, and just just makes sense. Pool adjustments, we talked about that a little bit. Those will be going down from unlimited pool adjustments to just the one pool adjustment a year. And meter calibration requests, there's a fee included there. If the customer asks for a meter calibration and it turns out to be there was nothing wrong with that meter, there would be a $25 charge for doing that, because it is a very long, cumbersome process to pull those meters out, check the calibration, and put them back in. And typically what you find, meters never speed up. They always slow down. So, you know, usually for the homeowner, you don't see that, that happen much. So I did want to go over just a quick few other little things. I met with Mayor Pro Tem Heffernan and Councilman Seelinger about a few items, and we went through this. And on section 1.2, we clarified that the owners would pay that $150 deposit. That wasn't clear prior. We talked about the usage with no valid account in section 1.4, and that just basically means a lot of times we have places where a resident may pass away, and then that person never gets, the new person that comes in doesn't get it put in their name, and that's what the purpose of this is for, is to make sure that whether it's a son or a daughter or whoever's moved in, that they get that put in their name. 1.2 and 1.3. We reversed those. It just works better to have those in a different order. We talked about in section 2.4 about late fees. We added in there that if the 15th falls on the holiday or weekend, that payment is due the following business day. We talked about section 5.1, and we defined the word problem. And we talked about the meter accuracy. So we actually have a percentage in there, so it's clear. Right. And in section 9.2, we added a clause including but not limited to, because the way it was before, it narrowed it to just those things that were specified. This doesn't close that door. And then the last one, the equalized payments, we've discussed that we don't offer that process because it is difficult for our staff to administer for one, and we don't see that anywhere else in other municipalities.
Did they get those calls now?
Excuse me?
Profanity? Do the people cuss?
Oh, just every once in a while. Cutoff day, if you ever want to come up and visit us, we'll be glad to let you listen in.
Huh.
Do you ever cut off on Fridays?
We do not cut off on Fridays. Our policy does have that in there. We don't do the cutoffs on Fridays.
Is there ever an issue when people don't have water for the whole weekend?
There is a time if there are people that have been cut off and they haven't reinstated, they may be off longer than that. You know, code enforcement can be called in at a certain time because they're required to have working plumbing. So if it goes over a certain amount of time, it could be turned over to code enforcement.
Okay. Very good. Thank you, Kevin. Any questions for Kevin?
I just have a request though, with our alert system, if we would re-advertise that, however staff thinks that needs to be, because I certainly didn't realize at some point that I needed to let the city know I need to be alerted, and I ended up paying. So I'm afraid other people are probably in the same situation. So if we could re-advertise that so people are aware of it, I think that'd be a good idea.
Okay.
Kevin, the new bills are due on the 15th.
Bills are due on the 15th.
When are they considered delinquent?
21st.
When do you cut off?
22nd.
Now, I asked Parks about this because I looked at the statute when we were talking about this, and it seems that the statute says you have to give 10 days between the time that they're delinquent and the time that you're cut off, and I don't think we're meeting that requirement here.
Well, would you consider they're delinquent on the 15th, in essence, because that's when they're actually due, is the 15th. We add a delinquent fee on the 21st, but they're actually due the 15th.
Well, I mean,
and it's clear on the bill.
Okay, well, I was, this Kara and Alonzi at the School of Government, She says that, the law allows you to disconnect for non-payment after 10 days delinquent. Statute GS 160A 314. So are we complying with that if it's the 15th and we're cutting on the 21st?
And and I'll agree with you that most places you'll see is the 15th and the 25th. Our long-standing practice, though, has been the 22nd.
But I mean, withstanding that, if we're in violation of the statute, it doesn't matter how long we've been doing it, does it?
Hadn't researched that, but it does look like 25th be the statutory. And that's very common. You see cutoffs on the 25th in a lot of places.
But I mean, it's common because it's regulated by statute.
Well, yes.
I mean, that's,
When's the due date for the water?
Well, and currently, it's due the 10th. So the bills go out at the end of the month. They're due by the 10th. If you don't pay them on the 10th, we don't charge a late fee till the 15th. And then we don't cut off is the 22nd.
So it's 12 days
So it's
after.
12 days after.
So you have 12,
So it's
currently, yeah, that's.
currently due. So if we're moving, and so what we discussed as staff is you've got this weird time of your bill's due by the 10th. But if you don't pay it on when it's due, we don't charge a late fee until the 15th. So you give it like a 5-day grace period. So just to make it, it's very difficult to explain to people. So, because they always say, well, so therefore it's really due by the 15th because you're not charging me a late fee. So we're moving the due date to the 15th. But if that's running in conflict with the general statute, we either need to move the due date to the 10th like it is now, or move the cutoff date to the 25th, one or the other, whichever, it's your policy.
Why don't we just charge the late fee on day one?
We are, under the new
Is that
policy.
the new-
We're just moving it to the 15th. We can push it back up to the 10th, but that only gives, if you get your bill in the mail and you like to open it and read it and then mail it in to us or drop it off, with the postal service the way it is around here, sometimes you don't get it until maybe the 6th or the 7th. So I would be leery of setting that hard due date by the 10th.
I'm fine with, it sounds like the simplest thing would be the 15th and, no grace period. It's like with credit cards, you're 1 minute late and they want to hit you with that $35 whatever. But it sounds like from what Richard and Park says, if it's going to be the 15th, then the cutoff has to be the 25th.
well, the 15th may work better for a lot of people. A lot of people get paid by every 2 weeks. So that may work out. I mean, that's a statutory point, but the second thing I wanted to mention, I guess Belmont has been somewhat lenient with some folks who may be on fixed income or financially challenged in some other way, and have worked with them on that. And I understand the desire to have a one-size-fits-all, it's due today, or if you don't pay by this day, you're cut. I get that, but I'm still a little uncomfortable with that. Belmont's a very affluent town now, but that does not mean everybody in the town is as affluent as everyone else. I know we've got a lot of elderly on fixed incomes. We may have some other folks who are challenged with paying bills. And I'd wonder, is there any policy we could put in place that might accommodate people that have issues like that? Or is there a desire to do that?
So we actually talked about this sort of indirectly when we met the other day. One idea that Kevin actually suggested was we could create two, and correct me if I'm putting words in your mouth, but we could have two basically due dates. You could have, like, for example, your bill due on the 1st, and then another set of people, their bill due on the 15th. And then people could choose whatever one works best for them, and then we just set our schedules appropriately. And I'm very receptive to doing something like that. I don't know what the appetite is on the rest of the council, but because I've heard some of that too, where you've got senior citizens on fixed incomes, and you know, the check comes in at a certain time every month, and, you know, the 15th doesn't necessarily work best for everyone. And, you know, I think if we've got some ability to help with some of that, you know, it doesn't create an undue burden for the city.
You're talking about like cash flow, like people are having cash, like just the timing's not working out?
Yeah, like the one lady who talked to me, she told me that, you know, her check comes in on whatever day it is, but it's not, but then her bill, I guess, is due before that, so she's paying the late fee every month. So that's, you know, an extra $15 on her bill every month. And I know some of it's, you know, budgeting and whatnot, but, you know, some people have situations that are difficult. And, you know, I know the city, at least our utility fund is, you know, not, you know, I think we've got some flexibility there where we can kind of manage our cash. But, you know, I don't know. I mean, if there's, if the rest of you guys are interested in doing something like that, I'd certainly be interested in pursuing it.
Does your system allow for choose your date, whether it be the 1st or the 15th?
This would be something I'd have to explore with the finance staff, and something that we brought up, we did discuss as a possible option. We couldn't do the equalized payments and some of the other things that we discussed, but possibly having two sets of, well, two routes, so to speak, and let those people have, you know, the 1st and 15th. I haven't seen it before, but it doesn't mean it's something that we could not look into and see if it's something that we could adapt to.
I think the first time you did something like that, their bill would go up higher.
Well, there would be like, what if,
Because you'd have to accrue
Yeah.
the cost. So instead of their bill being $40, it'd be $60. That first
prorated,
time.
yeah.
So I don't know if that solves the issue. That would be the outcome you would get based on what I'm hearing on the change. You'd just be giving somebody 2 weeks grace period, but they'd still be responsible for the prior water usage.
It would be based on when the meter's read. So half people would be read 8th to the 8th, and the other people would be read the 20th to the 20th.
And is everybody not caught up? Didn't we do this delayed billing for 6 months on this?
So under the governor's former executive order, we had to suspend cutoff and late fees and delinquent penalty fees for that, I believe, a 6-month period. Those that had an accrued balance, we had to offer them a payment plan. And so they had, I believe, 6 months to get caught up, so they should be caught up. If you want to do something like what you're discussing, it needs to be across the board, because we can't offer exclusive emoluments. So we can't say if you're 55 and older, you don't have to pay a late fee, or if you make under $30,000 a year, you don't have to pay a late fee. So we have to be across the board. So it may be a matter of choose your own billing date, but it has to be something that we offer to everybody.
And what we find is seniors, a lot of people are concerned, you know, seniors, fixed incomes. They're never on the cutoff list. Seniors are the first to pay that bill. When it hits the mailbox, they're right here dropping it in the drop box. Your cutoff list, 80% the same folks. And I don't know that anything you do would change that, because it comes down to the budgeting. Remember that we set little envelopes when we were young, and so much goes in each envelope. So
It seems to me for efficiency and efficient use of our time, we should maybe go ahead and look at the 25th as the cutoff date and
yes,
send it back to staff to evaluate whether we think it would be good to do a 2-time situation.
well, currently you're not doing that at all. And so
Yeah.
that this practice is we cut off the end of
Right.
that month. We don't give grace period. So if you did adopt this policy, it wouldn't change that. I do agree with the 15th and the 25th,
Yeah.
moving the 22nd to the
It is
25th,
what it is.
because that's clearly in line with the statutes.
Yeah.
And I don't think that would create any issues with our
I don't think so.
readings. That's just something that we can change and adjust.
Anybody
there's-
want to,
And this doesn't make it any harder for people to pay bills that it's already under.
No.
So
This just codifies.
I'd rather just move forward with this, and if you guys want to go back and modify this with exemption after you look into it, that's fine. But
Yeah,
let's just go ahead and move forward with this, and then if you have ideas in the future, that should be
Riddle me this,
good.
the effective date of the policy is blank, in the draft that you've provided. When would it be effective? Because I think I would certainly want some time to educate and publicize that this is the way it's going to be, or you're going to give yourselves lots of headaches and maybe invoke Section 11 regarding profane, indecent, and threatening calls. People need to be educated about some of these changes, and certainly the fact that it's pool season is upon us. In terms of the topping off, I could see that being an issue if somebody tops it off a little bit and now, oops, that was the only one you get. What do you mean? I've always, So I just want to, I'd caution in terms of that and making sure that and I mean, it's always, when I was a professor and I'd say, well, the review session is going to be on this date. And, I could tell everyone, I could send emails, and I always get, well, no one told me the review session was tonight or I would have gone. You're always going to get some of that, but.
For the pool issue, what we can do is when the people do call us, we can go ahead and give them the second adjustment, but let them know the policy's changed. So they wouldn't be getting the third and the fourth
But
adjustment.
I mean, certainly you'd put something in to those that get the bill hard copy. I would assume we'd send out something saying, here's this policy now, it's going into effect on X date, be aware. Because I just think you're asking for trouble if you don't sufficiently
they need
provide notice of I guess, changes, or what some people might consider changes, considering it's been kind of ad hoc in the past.
So nobody
I
wants
agree.
to.
I think you need to give them lead time, probably several billing cycles, lead time.
So maybe
Whether-
July 1st with the new budget
Whether,
fiscal year.
whether they read it or absorb the information or not, at least you can fall back and say, we've had this information out there for 2-3 months in preparation for the transition.
What's today?
May
Why don't we
3rd.
just do July 1st,
July
with the new
1st.
budget year?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm fine with
60
moving it.
days should be enough time.
And one thing is it's moving the dates forward and not closer.
That's like, so people are only gonna find out, like, I mean, right now they have to pay by the 10th. No, it's not till the
Yeah.
15th. It's not like anything's being shortened up except, so I feel real comfortable with it. Like,
Yeah.
This won't
if
affect
you
the
wanna give
vast
it
majority
July,
of our.
this isn't gonna affect anybody to the negative. If anything, it's gonna give everybody more grace period, so.
I'm fine with moving ahead with it as it is, modifying the dates to reflect the statute, and then, as Ryan proposed, maybe looking at seeing if there's anything that we can do. So
So are you making a motion to that effect?
I will make that motion. That will serve as a motion.
I will second that
Got
motion.
a second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, very good. Let's go back to the item on the rules of procedure. Item number 4 that Richard wanted to table to the,
Okay, yeah. Since I asked for this, I'll go ahead and lead off.
take your mask off.
Yeah, we're going to take that off. I'd like to talk about our minutes. I mean, I know in here it says that our minutes can be pretty much the motion, the vote. I would like to see our minutes have a little bit more meat on the bone. And the reason that came to my attention, and they used to be fuller minutes, not just the structural part of it. But what I've talked to, I had talked to several members of the press at the Gazette. Now, they used to come to our meetings and they could write their articles firsthand. They were there to hear the discussion, who said what. But because of budget cuts and readership, they're working from our minutes. And if we've got really thin minutes, they're going to just be able to report the structural and not exactly what's happening. Now, I know our minutes are recorded, but I've also asked them, well, would you go and listen to the recording? And they said, if I have to, I absolutely would, but I'm pressed for time. He said, we basically work off the minutes. I think it'd be good for the citizens in a hard copy to have better minutes, and I think it would be good for us if we want to reflect back on them to see who said what and why. That might be helpful because I don't like going through the tape and trying to find who said what when. That can be kind of difficult, at least for me. So that's one point. As far as the election of Mayor Pro Tem, I know a lot of municipalities, it's a top vote getter. And I think that simplifies the process for council. takes council out of it, out of voting. It takes politics out of it, personal preference. Top voter gets it, and it's decided. It's done. As far as, I would still like to receive a hard copy. I do get headaches from reading off of these for any protracted length of time. I did go to my laptop because the screens on these are so small, it just magnified the problem for me. With our council packets, now, and this is going a while back when I was first on council, we used to get our packets the Wednesday before the council meeting. More or less, there were times we did not. But what that did is that gave us 5 days to look over the material, gave you the weekend, and gave you time to go actually visit sites that you might want to go to. And we've been getting them pretty much in a timely manner, but I know it's a 48-hour minimum, but I'd like to try to get them on a Friday if we can beforehand, because that means that I can read it over the weekend at my own pace. If I need to go visit a site that we're going to be talking about, I don't have to rush to do it.
What rule are you referencing there?
I'm sorry?
What rule are you referencing there?
I think that's in part 6. I think it's under item 4. Yeah, I mean, that's what I wrote down, so I'm guessing that's where it is. So those are just a few items. Like I said, I would like maybe a little bit more robust written minutes, possibly looking at the mayor pro tem being the top vote getter. That's not uncommon. And trying to get our council packs, make sure we get them possibly a Friday before the Monday meeting, when feasible.
So you currently get them 2 Fridays before the Monday meeting. That's just, which is something you discussed in the 2020 retreat of it used to be, like you said, the Wednesday before the meeting, but you asked to get more information sooner. So we try to get you 2 full weekends plus the week. So you do get it sooner. Now, it is shorter than that in the rules of procedure. I think it says at least 48 hours, so we're greatly exceeding that. But the 48-hour rule was what I think what the School of Government said is just a good practice. Clearly, as complicated as our meetings are, you need well over 48 hours.
Well, I mean, like I said, I think we have been getting them in a timely manner, but I just think there's a few times where I don't know if you've made adjustments or whatever, where it was kind of tight.
Okay, so you've had about 9 days. Is that adequate?
That's adequate.
Okay.
Okay, so as far as, and again, I was getting a hard copy. I'd still like to continue to get a hard copy. I think the mayor gets one. I mean, that's just a personal preference. Sometimes there's a lot of material on here to cover. Like I said, I just get headaches from spending a lot of screen time. This is not the only time that I spend in front of a monitor. And then it depends on how council feels about the mayor pro tem. I always thought it should be the top vote getter. I know that's not uncommon. We have been voting on it. I'm fine either way, but it's something I thought we might want to talk about if there was a preference to possibly go with the popular vote.
What's the school government say on that?
That's what I just transposed it from the school government.
Yeah, I don't think we changed
stick
that
with
section.
them and leave the authority to whoever. On the minutes, I mean, if we, I don't know how you do them in a way where everybody's going to feel like everything was captured.
Well, I don't think that's the intent, but I mean, just when people are reading the minutes, so somebody made a motion, but nobody really, there's no discussion. I mean, and I know it's a little bit more work. We used to have some of that discussion in our minutes. So when you would read the minutes, you could kind of get an idea of what framed the vote.
I would think you'd get a better idea of that from the recording. Like, for example, if I had a choice between Jesus talking on a recording and reading the Bible, I would choose the recording of Jesus talking.
Yeah.
I
It's
think
an odd example.
it is an odd example, but that's the only one I could think of in my mind.
Well, I think to Richard's point, I think what he's saying is that a lot of people are reading the Bible and not necessarily listening to Jesus.
Well, that's because that's not possible. But right now, all of this is being recorded, so you can hit play, you can hear the laughter, you could hear somebody get excited, or you could hear somebody say something monotone versus Jamie trying to capture punctuation on the discussions. And I think that would be my fear, would be being taken out of context in writing versus my expression verbally. And I think if we can find a way to increase the minutes and make them broader, fine. But I want to get away from trying to pick out people's tones and intentions. I think that's very subjective, and the minutes need to be 100% objective.
Well, here's a great point. For purposes of our discussion today, Rule 6A dealing with the minutes says the minutes need not record discussions of the council, though the council in its discretion may decide to incorporate such details into the minutes. So we can, in our discretion, decide to do that, but nothing was going to prevent or allow that based on adopting these rules of procedure. We'd still have that discretion to do that. So, the minutes or the rules as proposed would contemplate our ability to do that. Now, if we want to make that decision of whether we want to exercise our discretion today or at some point in the future, but that's still contemplated by the minutes as drafted, or by the proposed rules as drafted. So that wouldn't be foreclosed by drafting these. And I'd say the same thing with
I agree.
Rule 13A4, I think, is the delivery to council members. 13A4 says each council member shall receive a hard or electronic copy of the draft agenda and the agenda packet. So if a council member, like the mayor, wants to receive the hard copy, there's nothing in the rules that's adopted that would preclude that from happening. So.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was getting them. For whatever reason, with COVID, I stopped getting them, but I would like to go ahead and resume getting a hard copy. And I'm fine. We can go ahead and continue with the minutes as it is, because you are right. You can always say, let the record show. And that should be the caveat to say, I would like the text in the printed minutes to reflect this. So, I mean, that's a fairly common practice. Everybody has to remember to preface, if it's anything that you want in the written minutes, to preface it with, let the record show.
Let the record show I agree with you.
I think that's good.
Okay. I mean, I'm fine with that.
Okay.
I just, how like you send somebody an email and they took it way out of context, or vice versa. I just fear about that. I don't want to.
Yeah. But there's some value in having context around the votes too. It's.
Anybody want to make a motion that we adopt the enclosed rules of procedure?
I'll so move.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Let's move on to the
minutes.
Reports.
Environmental sustainability report.
Thank you, Mayor. So the next items are reports from your advisory boards. You've got the minutes from the draft minutes from the Environmental Sustainability Board of their April 13th meeting, the Watershed Review Board of its April the 19th meeting, the Planning and Zoning Board of its April the 15th meeting, the Historic Preservation Advisory Board, its April the 14th meeting, and then for the manager's report, I've got a couple quick items just to remind you of. You'll have your second budget workshop on May the 17th. That's a Monday at 4 o'clock in here. Please send me any input that you have on the proposed budget that we presented at the March workshop, the first budget workshop. I will have the list of all the funding requests from outside agencies, and I'll send those out to you. I'll collect those and send those out to you. So we'll need to discuss those as well during that second budget workshop on the 17th. We'll have a special meeting to hear the Del Webb rezoning case on May the 24th at 6 o'clock in this room. So we'll be meeting a lot in May. And I believe we've scheduled board interviews for May the 10th. At what time does those begin?
I'm shooting between 4 and 4:30, but it just depends on people's availability. We'll send out the event.
Okay. And I believe we do have applicants for the tourism authority
What day's it
on
gonna
that.
be,
So,
Yeah,
Yes, we have I believe we have 2 applicants on either the home and the afternoon that have recently come on board.
So hopefully that will help with your question.
What else do we have? What other boards?
Board of Adjustment and Parks and Recreation Board
And I believe that we have
and Historic Preservation.
but I don't believe we've had anybody that has applied that lives within this district. That we have one open position, but it's somebody that lives within the historical district, and I don't believe anybody that has applied actually qualifies for that specific position.
I guess it'll be a short interview then.
So we'll be meeting a lot on Mondays in May. As I was going through our revenues for the current fiscal year, I saw that the developer for the Chronicle Mill has paid the $100,000 for transportation mitigation. That was part of the conditional rezoning in lieu of the improvements at East Catawba Street and Park Street for that turn lane that they were not able to apply right of way. That will just roll into the fund balance in the general fund, like the $75,000 that we received from the Aberfall development. I'd like to reserve that in the fund balance and create a transportation mitigation fund as we get more and more of these payments in lieu of the transportation improvements, so that we have a restricted account within the fund balance that we can then use whenever it's time to make those transportation improvements, and then create some policies around guidelines so that, that it's, for example, that money is spent on that project that it's intended and is not spent on a project somewhere else in town. Or maybe you do want to spend it on a project somewhere else in town, but come up with some policy and guidelines for transportation mitigation fund so that we track that throughout the years. Also, and I see we have some visitors tonight that attended the skateboard park input meeting that we held on the 28th. I guess that was last week. We had some really good feedback from folks that skateboard. So the next step in that is to finalize the design. Spawn Ranch will take the feedback that we received both electronically and from the meeting. We'll finalize that design. We'll take that back to the Parks and Recreation Board and Council for final approval. Their plan is to have that ready to start construction in the summer or late summer, early fall, and then have that completed by November. They said it's about a 3-month construction process, assuming good weather and availability of materials and all the normal things in the last year. So we should have the skateboard park finished by the end of this year, which is good news. And then, as referenced earlier in the meeting, our friends in Raleigh are considering taking away our authority to regulate tree protection. And so the work that you've done in the last 2 years and what we talked about tonight for tree protection with construction could all be for naught if House Bill 496 becomes law. So this is another one that we need to be on the lookout for. And if you so desire, we can have a resolution opposing that at one of your meetings in May, because we need to get in front of the General Assembly quickly on that one.
Have you enlisted the Environmental Sustainability Board, perhaps, in efforts regarding that?
And I believe we've already notified them.
It's on their agenda for next week.
Okay. Okay.
I've heard that the TIA is under review too within the state. So my question is, if they do anything with the state on the TIA, are any projects that we've already approved grandfathered in? If they're conditional use and they agree to the TIA? And therefore, if we delayed a project and the state statute changed, we might no longer be able to apply the TIA.
So we have either, and correct me, Shelley, if I get this wrong, we've either received the transportation improvement, like for Amberley, we've got the turn lane near the high school, or we've received the payment in lieu of the transportation improvement if they were unable to get additional right-of-way. And that's the case in Aberfall and the Chronicle Mill. And Aberfall was right kind of in that as we were working on our TIA ordinance, so they did a payment in lieu. So we haven't missed out on any, and I believe the conditions are typically that you collect that fee prior to issuing the zoning permit.
No, actually, we collect the fee for construction permits for the entire site.
So anything that's in the pipeline now that follows our TIA ordinance, even if the state changed the law, they would have to either verify that they've gotten the right-of-way and they're working on the transportation improvement, or they have to pay the payment in lieu before we'll release those plans for construction. So we won't miss out on either the improvement or the payment.
Thank you, Adrian. All right.
That is all that I have, Mayor.
All right. Any other business? Want to start out with Ryan?
Sure. Well, you can leave the Jesus and Bible analogy off the minutes. And that can just be available for those here this evening and those who click on the recording. As a request to Adrian, could you request from the city of Cramerton their TIA that they had done for the what's the property down the street from my house? Not the old one, but the newer one.
The courtyard?
Yes. Could
Yes.
you request their TIA on behalf of the city if everybody's okay with that?
Certainly.
Yeah. Yes.
Love to see what they had done there. I think these regulations coming from the state is just more of the same. We've been dealing with this since I got elected back in 2012, whether it be moratoriums going away, architectural guidelines, zoning rules, and it's just a big power grab. And so I don't know where we stand kind of going forward, but I do think education is the best way going forward and having a unified voice as much as we can, where we can as a council, especially on some of these larger projects. I think we know what's best as far as what we can do with the information we have within the rules that we have, and there will always be differences within there, but I don't see a huge discrepancy here on what we're trying to accomplish as far as, limiting houses per acre and transportation improvements and sidewalk improvements. So I'm open to discussing any of that with any of you further. And then I did have just a question. Are we under any litigation right now with MPV construction? MPV or Momentum?
No.
Okay. Have we not paid them something at this time, or is that correct?
Yeah, we're paid in full.
We're paid in full? Okay. So is that something we should discuss? Is it necessary to discuss? Should we be discussing anything with that gentleman individually? I was just wondering what your thoughts were on that part. I felt like he made some accusations that I didn't feel discussing on a private phone call. So.
Wasn't the architect sick for a pretty good while?
There were a lot of issues with this project, and we were able to complete it. Yeah. And we brought this to you in a closed session to avoid litigation, and we reached a compromise where both parties gave a little bit. We made
It's
it.
not all on our back. No, I don't think so.
So this is after all that?
Yes. So he agreed not to challenge us, and we agreed not to challenge him in court.
Okay. All right, that's all for me. Thank you.
Okay. Rich?
Well, I'm going to continue Ryan's questions. I don't know if Parks addressed it or not. I mean, he did bring a lot of stuff to the table. I mean, he didn't get to finish his comments. I mean, should we be meeting with him if he wants to talk to the council individually or in person?
I don't see any value in doing that, but if you are inclined to do that, you sure have the opportunity.
Okay, so I mean, just for a point of clarification, we're not prohibited by.
It's sort of like building a house and having a fight with your contractor and everybody.
Sure.
else.
Well, the reason I ask is that Ryan brought up the question of litigation. I didn't know if it sounded like there was potential litigation or if there was something on the table.
I'm under the understanding they signed off.
I was going to say, if they sign something, that would probably waive. You typically, if you sign any sort of settlement or anything, it waives. You release all of your claims that even that you knew about or that you don't know about, anything related to that. The subject of the settlement agreement, which would be this building. So I would think that anything, this is ground that's already been resolved.
This was a 3 or 4 year process where the regular meetings, disagreements. I mean, it would take hours and hours to go back and reconstruct. Everybody's got their story, he said, she said, what they heard. I really think it's in everybody's best interest to move forward.
And Adrian, am I recalling correctly that this company bid on the Parks and Rec Center?
I'm sorry.
Did this company
did,
bid
they
on the
did.
Parks and Rec Center?
Oh,
Not
no,
on
they
parks,
build,
they
they bid on,
The water treatment plant.
Yeah.
Water
renovation.
treatment plant, okay. So that says something to me there, that they had a desire to work with us after the others. So that, I just question. Okay, thank you.
Also, beyond that, will we start resuming interviews in person? I know that we are doing our board interviews on the 10th, teleconference. But I know the governor has lifted a lot of the mandates and we are gathering here. Is there a reason why we're doing them virtual?
We've had a request from some applicants to continue to do them virtually, but people have different comfort levels, and it's also a convenience issue. But if you want to do them in person, they're your interviews. We can do them however you'd like to do them.
I mean, I respect their request, but I mean, if they're going to be serving on these boards, there's a good chance that they're going to meet in person as well and may have attendees just as we do. So, I mean, if they've got these concerns, I mean, that may be a sign that they want to preclude themselves from serving on these boards if they still have reservations, possibly. When can we move back into City Hall? Do we have any kind of timeline for that since the restrictions have been loosened?
I'm not aware of a loosening of the social distancing. When those are lifted, we certainly can meet back at City Hall if the council chooses to.
Okay, because I may have misunderstood what the governor said. The social distancing of 6 feet, I guess, is still in place. Okay, so what he addressed was the number of people who could gather. I think it was 100 now.
Mhm.
Okay.
So if you'll recall, so the March 2020 workshop was like 3 days into
Yes.
COVID. And so we did 6 feet spacing and we were able to fit about 8 people
Yeah.
in the room.
Okay.
You cannot social distance sitting at the dais. So when that distancing limitation is removed, then certainly we can move back there,
And it could be perhaps in June, July.
hopefully.
Yes.
Well, and the last thing I want to touch on is I don't know to what end or if we would be able to develop a strategy, but I'm going to go ahead and assume that all of these proposals in Raleigh will get approved. And I'm saying that because I'm sure there's a lot of money pushing these ordinances for quadruplexes, for streamlining or elimination of our tree ordinance. Because as Shelley said, it's money. You know, okay, so if it's money, the people who are paying the money are driving the bill. Okay, so I mean, that's a pretty powerful lobby. And unless they get a really large outcry from the citizenry, because those are votes, I would assume that this is probably going to get through. That said, I mean, I don't know legally what we can do, but I mean, if there is anything we can do to begin to develop some strategies
I don't think so.
to deal with
Well,
quadruplexes, the tree board, or the TIA.
my thought, no, I'm sorry to,
I'll just say, you know, it might be time in anticipation of a probable approval to start spitballing that idea.
I mean, I would think that it sounds like the League of Municipalities opposes this, and I would assume that they have a lobbying arm. That would probably be our best, you know, that's one avenue, and an avenue that, you know, they at least have the lobbyists, or government relations, I guess we'll use that euphemism, but, you know, they can play that game. You know, I don't know how effective that will be, but they at least can play that game for us better than we can, probably.
Well, I mean, I would agree to go ahead and leverage that, but then I would also, you know, where's the money coming from? I mean, the league lobbies, but do they donate? If they don't donate, money is a lot of influence. And that's just my thought. Maybe if we can plan in advance anything that we could do in anticipation of passage, then I would suggest we start doing it. That's all I have.
Well, I'll segue from that. You know, one thing I guess we can do is educate, and in educating, you know, I think that ties in with what Adrian discussed about, you know, going out and meeting with the neighborhoods and whatnot. So as things continue to improve, I'm assuming that's on the horizon. I believe you mentioned that in your last weekly email as well, so I look forward to the ability to engage with the neighborhoods. I do also agree with what Richard said about in-person meetings. I mean, I think at this stage, for this month, I guess it's fine to do it by Zoom still, but I would hope that by the next round of interviews, perhaps sometime in the fall, that if people aren't comfortable by then, I do think Richard has a point that, city buildings are open, business is being transacted, and if that's going to be a hindrance, then maybe this isn't, this isn't the right time for you to be participating in these boards, because I think there's a lot of benefits to meeting in person, and I certainly understand when things are more dire, but we've been meeting in person since June. The planning board's been meeting in person most months. At some point, you just got to get back to normal, especially with city buildings being open now for the transaction of the business of the city. I'd like a code enforcement update next month. I think it's been a couple months since we've had one, so I'd like to hear about how some of those things are going. And then just one point of clarification, I guess, from the city manager. I know at our last workshop, we decided to reprioritize the community enhancement capital improvement projects and put the pedestrian improvements at Park and Catawba Street #1, which means it will get funded this year. And I just want to, because I've had some questions, what exactly does that entail? Because what can we do if we're funding it this year? Because I know some of that's still contingent because it's a state intersection. What are we going to be able to do this year with that priority?
So after our workshop, the CIP workshop, I reached out to NCDOT to reactivate those discussions, because they've just sort of been stalled for the last couple of years because of the utility relocation issues and the right-of-way acquisition issues. I don't know if it's as simple as widening the curb out there to widen the sidewalk landing, so that instead of pushing it back, that seems too easy, so it's probably not possible. But I am waiting on NCDOT to return my phone call, text, and email. And when they do that, then we can re-engage them, walk it again, and find out what options we have. And hopefully there's a relatively simple, relatively inexpensive solution until there's a larger project and the MPO is looking at scoring, and maybe has scored, I don't know where that stands. But an interim solution until there's a more comprehensive improvement to that intersection.
Thank you.
Yes,
That's all.
Thanks, Jim. I've got nothing. Martha?
Just a comment. I left the last workshop to go speak at the school board because Art Shoemaker asked several people, and as much as he's done for this community, I certainly thought that was appropriate. And this council spent a huge amount of time last summer listening. But David Locklear, who's a doctor in the area, who is Lumbee Indian, spoke very eloquently and has been a resident here for 40 years about how that this was a great thing to have the Red Raiders. So I just want to make sure you're honest. I thought that had more power than any of the rest of us. But that's why I left, and that's all for me.
Thank you for doing that too, Martha. Mark?
I like the idea of doing the neighborhood meetings. I think especially around, involving some educational aspect about, planning and development, I think would be a good idea. I also appreciate staff work on the Dent Wizard case. I noticed they have a nice big wooden fence up now, so thank you to whoever made that happen. And just an observation, that intersection there at Main Street and Wilkinson, it's always been kind of a bad intersection, but I've noticed almost every single time I've been there lately, it seems like somebody's running the light, sometimes blatantly so. Like, I'm sitting there and then 2 seconds later, 1 or 2 cars will blow through the light. I don't know how much we can do about that, but I figured I'd note it because I am kind of concerned that with the frequency that it appears to be occurring, someone's going to get hurt there. So I will trust that to the very capable police department and let them figure out the best way to handle that. But that's all for me.
And so we can certainly handle that on the enforcement side. I have reached out to DOT again. I think we brought this intersection up at the last meeting. It seems like the timing of that signal is off, and it's not allowing many cars on that north-south through movement across Wilkinson. And they promise they're going to look into it. So
What I've noticed is most of the east-west
is it?
people, I don't know, I'm usually sitting in traffic north-south, so maybe that's just my perspective. But you know, I'm sure you guys can figure it out. But I just note that because I'm up there a lot. And
Put some cops up there. That'll see.
We can handle the enforcement side, but we'll ask NCDOT to adjust the signal.
Okay.
All right. Anything else? All right. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Meeting